Hi, and welcome to Deeply Connecting. Channel is about connecting more deeply with God and others. And right now we have Allison here with us, and we're going to talk about the connection/battle.
Hopefully not a battle.
Hopefully not a battle.
Yeah.
Between our hearts and our minds.
Cool. This topic came up just in conversation, so we thought we would
include everyone.
In my undergrad time, I had switched from studying engineering to studying psychology, and it really was super fun for me to discover all of these things that I was already thinking about. But one of them in particular was about this concept of our mind versus our heart, where I started to realize how much at war they were with each other, whereas colloquially people probably talk about it like, are you a feeler, are you a thinker kind of thing, and I am much more of a thinker. I use my head and logics more often, but I really started to understand how important my feelings were, and really starting to think about how those two don't have to be at war. And how, honestly, I started thinking about them as like they're kind of in a marriage together with each other, and that I needed to learn how to better get my head to communicate with my heart. Because we talk about in Scripture, or Scripture states how we love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and mind. And we talk about how we have head knowledge versus heart knowledge, and I always found that connection so frustrating when people would be like, I know all these things, but I don't know it in my heart, kind of thing. And then this journey, too, of discovering all of these emotions that would come up, I realized I could use my head to figure out and help my heart my heart feels. It feels things. It doesn't know what to do with those feelings, but my head knows how to decipher things. So it really became a partnership between the two, where I used my head to discover and find the root source of why I was having negative feelings or negative fruits coming up. So it really started to become, like I said, a partnership, yeah. It was... There was one time, though, and it really became that way, where it was the head was coming down to the heart and helping it, because the heart really felt more like the raw source that it can't think, I can't control it as much. I'm more of a thinker anyway, so that was more of the natural flow of like learning how my brain could then communicate with my heart. But I don't know if I have as much to say about the heart communicating with the head, because I don't know if that's me personally because I'm more of a thinker, or if that's just how humans are, where like your heart's just going to scream whatever it does. And it's got its emotions. I mean, scientifically speaking, there's foundation to that, where like there's different layers of like the neural system and whatnot, and the base layer, and like how evolutionarily farther back, we are a brain that feels with hormones and whatnot, and we evolved with a brain that thinks on top of that. So I remember one of my professors telling that, where he's just like, we're feeling brains that think, not thinking brains that feel.
Interesting.
Yeah, to put it in a very it's just simplified manner, it was just like that was the root of how the brain evolves in animal kingdom.
Yeah.
So that's one way that makes humans, I think, distinct, is that we can think about the way that we feel.
Yeah. It kind of, just a thought that I had just now when you were saying that was, it makes it that much more important not to stuff our feelings.
Exactly, yeah.
They'll be there regardless.
Mm-hmm. And they're important. They're telling you important things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is important to control them. I'm not saying like just let them rampant wild and go on whatever. It's more just like pay attention to them.
Right. Because you can't really control them if you're trying to stuff them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can try and stuff them in a box, but eventually they'll get aggravated and pop out. But
wait, is it actually trying to
hide them?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily trying to like control your feelings, but maybe more recognize your feelings and control your actions.
Yes. Yeah. Scripture talks about not letting your emotions control your actions.
Yeah.
Where like
Right.
anger in itself is not a sin.
Right.
But what you do based on that anger that you have, that's where problems arise.
Right.
But yeah, being able to think about why you're feeling those things and acknowledge that instead of ignoring that you're angry.
Yeah.
If you're this person who's ignoring all of the emotions that are happening in you, it's like being in charge of a team where you know that this one person is like typically like gets aggravated about something and you send them out to do something. If you ignore the fact that they're probably going to be provoked and something bad will happen, that's going to be a worse off leader than if you're going to address the situation and go talk to the person. Yeah. Ignorance is never going to be helpful in solving situations.
Right,
so addressing why you feel things. But it takes time. It definitely does. And a lot of people get frustrated with it because there's no like class. It's just like, this is how you deal with your emotions. And people deal with them differently too. Because like I had to think about them a lot. I had to trace them back and find the root source. And I think that a lot of people could benefit from that. But I've also met a lot of people who are really great at managing their emotions in different ways that I don't understand. And that probably wouldn't work for me. Yeah. And I'm jealous sometimes of them because it feels like it takes less work because they're just like, I just meditate sometimes. And I'm like, wow, that's great. Wish that would work for me. Maybe it doesn't. I don't. Yep.
Yeah. Just thinking about the importance of recognizing our emotions and having self-control with our actions, controlling our actions. I remember talking to a friend who used to believe that if he were angry, that gave him permission to throw a chair across the room or whatever, because it's like it was justified because he felt angry. And then through counseling, realized that no, just because you're angry doesn't justify your bad actions,
right?
At all. Like, but that was like a real aha moment for him. Yeah, that like your actions are actually separate from your feelings. And that helped his relationships a lot when he realized that, because then it was just because he's angry at somebody doesn't justify him being an asshole to them. Yeah. For example. Right. Probably shouldn't have said that word. But,
but I mean, it is a difficult thing emotions there's a lot of potential energy and it has to turn into kinetic energy. So that's the hard part, is being able to control that aspect. Yeah. And one thing that like is a default for me that I've learned, it's not the best. What you would want to be able to do is like take that emotion and not necessarily have to act upon it and whatnot. But sometimes energy is energy and I just channel it into a safer emotion to express. So sometimes when I get angry, I just start crying because it lets it out, but it turned it into like sadness and frustration instead of, it's good. Emotions are like, it's raw energy that we have to figure out what to do with and how to channel it and how to
I mean, there's that verse that you mentioned in your anger is not wrong. It's not anger is not a sin, but in your anger do not sin. Right. Yeah. But going back to head and heart and how those are connected and how you connected them, how has connecting like your head and your heart helped you connect better with God and with other people?
Well, I remember there being one time that like all of this practice from like most of the time with like how I was learning what to do with it, it just helped me understand better where the sin was rooted because I was paying attention to emotions, and that's how I was seeing my heart was more of it kind of gave me like a symptom report of the deeper things. So I didn't really care about my emotions beyond that. I was just like, wow, these are useful. I'm going to keep doing that. But I always had a hard time. Like I knew in my, right. So there was a communication of, I guess it was more, so I said that I knew how to communicate my head to my heart, but I actually think it was the reverse. Where I really started to learn how to interpret what my heart was doing. So it was my heart communicating and my head learning how to interpret it.
Yeah,
and so
makes sense.
There was one time that I pointed to that I was so giddy about. I haven't done it since, but where I was able to, from all of that like practice of like, how the heck do I translate these pieces of information to like how my heart thinks and feels versus my head, because there was no way that I had ever done where my head was, because what we would want to do is tell our head, or have our head tell our heart to feel a certain way.
Right.
That would be ideal. That would be great. You
Right.
know? And there was one, so this was right after, it was actually, it was after a breakup that I had, and I remember feeling these, I can't remember what the emotion was, just this longing of acceptance from him and desiring, I think that's basically the emotion that I had right there. And I remember in my head realizing the problem there, and it was just like, because I was just like, why do I desire this so much?
Yeah.
And I realized, and there was a huge disconnect with the Lord. Like majority of the focus of my heart was on this guy instead. And I realized that, and that's when my head realized, like, my heart isn't wrong, it's just channeling it. I mean, it is wrong, but it wasn't wrong in the desire, it was channeled in the wrong avenue. And that was the first time that my head was able to like reach back down, and like, it didn't change the emotion, but it was finally just like, all of those longings and desires that you have, you should feel them towards the Lord. And so that was one of the first times that I was able to like pluck him out and put the Lord there instead. And it was kind of like a successful operation a little bit, where I was just like, I finally feel a desire for the Lord again. Because because there's some merit to that of like, I brought up the emotions that I was feeling towards that guy, and then just in my head replace it with the Lord, and like that conditioning of just like, this is how you should feel towards the Lord, kind of like recorrected it.
It's so good.
Yeah, it was weird, and I haven't done anything like that since, but that was one time that helped, that communication, being able to be like, this is where my heart's at, being able to solve it and then communicate it back down and correct it. Yeah,
that's so good.
But how that has helped my relationships with other people.
Before you go into that,
sure.
I remember, so Christopher West does this whole thing on theology of the body, and talks about how our sexual desires are actually meant to be for the Lord too. Like all of our, even our hunger, like when physically, when we feel hungry, it's supposed to actually point us towards our hunger for God, as like reminders of like, or even when we feel thirsty. And I experience this most when I'm fasting, because then it's like that, and that's like when I'm fasting, whenever I feel hungry, it's a reminder of like, I'm hungry for you, God. That's what I'm hungry for, more than food. I'm hungry for you. And that's what all of our longings are really designed to point us to, is our hunger for God. And so that's really cool that it worked for you to replace that guy with Jesus and have that longing for him. That's so cool. I love it.
I loved it too. It really felt like an easy that was one of the only times where I've been like, well, that was an easy solution.
That's awesome. Okay, so other people.
Right.
Good heart.
I don't know. That's been, I think, one of the most frustrating things about all of, like, it was a really cool time of like figuring all this stuff out, but it felt so selfish too. Where like, I was really just inward. This was my relationship with me and the Lord, trying to figure that out of like, how do I do this dance? How do I figure out myself? I mean, went in to study psychology, and personalities, who am I kind of thing. But yeah, so leaving the new season that I am in now is probably more geared towards like, what does it mean now to live out your faith in action instead of just like this figuring out time. And I loved that figuring out time, and I realized how selfish I can be, and like asking the Lord to remove that and feel satisfied and joy from sharing this information and like listening with, like, sadly, like in this past season of my life, like I have been so, I felt like a black hole kind of, where like just recently I've started to find the joy again in listening to other people and how simple that is. I've realized like how I've sometimes have just tuned people out because I just don't have the capacity anymore. And now it's, so I think stay tuned. Hopefully this will be a new thing. Yeah, of like, that's a great challenge for me now of like, how does this information help me commune with others and like actually act upon this and bring God's kingdom to them? And I don't know.
Well, I imagine.
Yeah, okay.
Correct me if I'm off. But I imagine that having a more connection between your head and your heart and more understanding and all of that would be kind of what we were talking about, where just recognizing your emotions and being able to express them, being able to maybe empathize with other people more because you're recognizing your own, maybe being able to have more control over your actions rather than just responding out of the base emotion without really knowing what's going on.
Right.
Imagine that would be some of the fruit from it, and that would help your relationships.
Right. That would be the ideal, but sometimes, especially if you do have a heart of selfishness throughout all of this, like going into the deepness of emotions can actually be destructive. I mean, I had to learn from there were times that I was projecting my emotions on other people, and that actually hurt a lot of my relationships. So learning how to deal with emotions still comes with you need a lot of grace and humility going through it, because I started to accumulate a lot of pride in this ability where people would hear that I could do these things of like figuring out the root of the problem or whatever, but I was terrible at doing it with other people. Like, cool, I could do it in myself, but I'd started to have pride in being able to figure other people out. And that is not at all the way that you should use, like, start thinking about others, because everyone has, like, people don't think like me. And I started to, project like the same concept, and that's what I was meaning when I like met other people who could deal with their emotions in a completely different way than me, and it worked for them. So that was something to learn from that. There was another thought that came to my mind in that, but it is now gone for a moment. But if I think of it, I'll bring it back up.
That makes sense. I actually hadn't thought of that until you said it, but I think I might be running into that same issue where I projecting my emotions onto other people, where like if I were feeling this way, then I would probably do this, and so since they've done that, then they're probably feeling this. Right,
exactly. Because that's what I had started to learn how to do, is I was running these simulations and calculating like, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling these things? And so when I was projecting my emotions on other people, I was basically putting myself in their shoes, running the simulations from the limited knowledge that I had, which was who I am, how I would react. I have no idea how they would react. So then my conclusions would then just come with, like, it was better than not putting myself in their shoes, but it was still heavily biased towards how I would react. And then I would come to these assumptions like, I know what you're feeling, kind of thing, and I never gave them the freedom sometimes, or...
That makes sense.
Yeah. And sometimes they would accept it too if they thought that I was good enough at doing this thing. That, it was a weird situation that eventually I met people who were just like, I'm not feeling that way at all. And I'm like, oh, I need to reevaluate. So don't, I started to completely separate from, I went through a time where like I hated personality types after this. I hated it. So there was a break on me doing this like emotional, that was the thought that I shut down. I stopped feeling things. when I realized all of these, using it incorrectly, like I still think I learned a lot and it was good, but once I started applying it incorrectly, and there was still a lot of like selfishness in my heart. When I moved here, at least I shut down and my heart just stopped feeling.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Is it feeling again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was a scary thing for me, because I had just come from this state of like really getting into like the depth of what I was feeling. I cried a lot, and it was really funny to meet people and they'd be like, "You don't look like a person that would cry," and I'm like, "Well, let me tell you." But then I stopped. I didn't feel or cry when I moved here, and that's what scared me, was this new sense of apathy that I had.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how going through that journey of like
emotions.
or just trying to apply it to other people, and then realizing that it wasn't accurate, and then being just abandoning
and the shame that comes from it too, of using it in that way, and being like, how could I have been so prideful?
Yeah.
So then dropping it, that's what I did. In my shame and guilt, I dropped it and was like, I'm not going to touch this anymore. And then
so now you've picked it back up for yourself, but just not applying it to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, now it's coming back to the idea of like, you listen. I enjoy listening to people now and hearing actually what's happening there. There's now a newfound curiosity of like, what's going on in your heart?
Yeah.
It's not mine.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That reminds me of this group counseling thing that I was doing, where they were saying, we like to make up stories, because it gives us understanding for what's going on, and so, but that can be so destructive, because it's actually totally made up, and it's not actually true. And so in this counseling thing, they were saying like, don't make up stories, don't guess what's happening, just go ask the person. Like, just say, hey, are you feeling this way?
There's also like a part of me too, in my simulations that I would run too, of like knowing whether I was truly at peace on things, was there'd be a lot of times where like I wanted to confront someone, and under the pretense of like forgiveness, where I'm like wanting to apologize to them or whatever, but in reality I was really
I've totally done that.
where I really had to check myself of like, I really just wanted an explanation. You really want that resolution of like, why did you do that to me?
Right.
And realizing like, this was also a newfound idea too, of like, we're not promised anything like that. Like, for us to demand that is completely like
controlling.
Yeah, it's controlling, it's prideful, like for me to think that I'm worthy of getting this thing.
Yeah.
So it was really hard for me to just ask like, what if I never spoke to that person again? Would I be okay? Like, not me being like, I don't want to speak to you again, but like, if I never got an answer, am I going to be okay with that? And I would never confront the person until I was okay with that.
Wow.
Because then that gives that person the freedom to react in whatever way. Like you were talking about earlier, I'm not going to... How you arrive to that point is hard. I don't know how to get there sometimes, but it is a relinquishing of like, am I going to be okay with never knowing the answer to this, and not requiring the person, not demanding them an answer.
That's so good.
It's hard.
That's something that I've been just wrestling with recently, and realizing recently is with these friends that have ghosted me.
Right.
And kind of even realizing that me being dependent on them responding for me to be okay is codependent. And like, I am dependent on their response or their acceptance or whatever for me to feel okay.
Yeah.
It's codependent, and then it also is controlling. Like it creates a controlling thing where I need to get them to respond so that I feel okay.
Right. Well, I mean, it sounds like the controlling is coming out of your dependence upon them.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
But they're still both there. Yeah.
Right, yeah. The codependency is first, and then it's a controlling thing.
Right, because you need that thing.
Yeah, because I need that thing.
Yeah.
And, so that's something that I've just been realizing recently and wrestling with is like, and trying to get to this place of releasing that and being like, God, change my heart. Like, I need to be okay whether or not they respond.
Right.
I need to be okay. I mean, this is happening to me.
Yeah.
Right now.
I mean, to go back to that situation where I was able to like redirect kind of what was happening of like, well, what is the thing that we're desiring? Maybe that desire isn't bad, but what are we not getting? We should be fully satisfied in the Lord. So what are we lacking on? I don't know. That's where I start to question of like, why am I still desiring this thing? How can I ask the Lord for to be filled in that sense?
Yeah.
What am I not asking the Lord for that's then making this gap where I want this thing from someone else?
Yeah. Which, I mean, he does fulfill our needs through other people. Like, he's created us to be...
Right. Yeah, it's not a completely independent you and God. That's it.
Yeah. But I think that's a really good point of asking him to fill that need, and then he can fill it however he wants. Like, he can fill it supernaturally, or he can fulfill it through other people.
Right.
Maybe that person, maybe not that person.
Right.
But asking him to fill it, and then releasing the person that you're trying to get to fill it. Yeah. Releasing them to do whatever they want to do. And that's really good. I need to do that. Thank you for that reminder.
I mean, it's all... I always talk about, like, okay, this is what you do, but you're always like, how do I do that?
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think how you do it is just asking him to fill the need. And also just, even if it doesn't happen right away, just releasing the person who's like, I release you. Yeah. You do not need to respond. I'm going to be okay whether you respond or not. Yeah. And it, just releasing them and kind of, Yeah.
I guess to me it feels like this concept of releasing though, like it's difficult. It's like when you're learning to walk, or like you've never used like a muscle or something, if you tell me if I've never used this arm before and you tell me to like straighten it, I don't know what messages to send. Like I have the pathways, but I'm like, I don't know what that feels like to do that. Yeah. So it's sometimes hard to imagine, like, how do I tell my heart to release it? Yeah. And then as you get better at it, I imagine, because you move my arm all the time, like I know exactly how to move it. And so if I get really good at that, I wonder if like it'll be easier for me to just be like, released, done, got it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I did get to that place recently with a few of the people that had ghosted me, and then now we're reconciled, which is great. But I got to that place before the reconciliation happened.
Right, the releasing?
Yeah, the releasing. Yeah. And I think for me, part of how I did it was through forgiveness also. Yeah. Like forgiving them for ghosting me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they might not have even sinned, but I still need to forgive them.
Right. And I mean, in the same, that was one, I don't think we talked about it in this video, but the rejection that I felt from the Lord, like people would be like, the Lord could never have done something wrong to you. How can you feel bad for him? But you still have to, someone finally telling me like, you have to get to a place of forgiveness. Right. It doesn't matter that clearly he didn't sin. Right. There is no sin in that. Right. But like, you still have those feelings.
Yeah, that's really good. Mm-hmm. Actually, this is really good. Because, I mean, no, we do. We need to release God also from the things that, where he's offended us. Mm-hmm. That's real. Yeah. Like we're
and that's a touchy subject because people are like, how could you ever be offended by... Right. Yeah, but still the sin in my heart, that's the thing that like you said, that person may not have sinned in their heart, but the sin in your heart may rub it the wrong way. And I think that's a lot of like the sin in my heart is actually why I hold that grudge. Right. Except, I'm pretty darn sure that's the reason, because I know it's not him. And I don't think it's just the cause of the fall of the world. Yeah. It's my sin, the reason that I feel that. But I still have to relinquish it and forgive it. Right. Yeah. So I guess, forgiveness is something about all on us. something that we hold. It's not necessarily like something about
Yeah.
that's a new way to look at that, where forgiveness is all on our part. It's
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
neat.
Yeah, that's really good though, because I've read this book by Philip Yancey called Disappointment with God. Super good.
Okay.
I highly recommend it. But I've gotten disappointed with him. I've gotten offended by him. And in order to in like your story with cutting down that tree, like in order to get reconciled, really, we do need to forgive him, even if he hasn't sinned, even if it is on our side. And so with other people too, it could just be a perceived. Interesting. Actually, that reminds me of a situation with my dad where we have gone on so many topics. It's okay. So my dad had disowned me for a bit, and the first conversation we had after coming back, like, neither of us felt like we did anything wrong. I didn't feel like I did anything wrong by going to the family reunion. He didn't feel like he had done anything wrong by disowning me for a year for going to the family reunion. And but I talked to a counselor before meeting up with him, and he recommended that we both express forgiveness to each other, not even asking for forgiveness, because neither of us felt like we had anything to ask for, but just expressing forgiveness. So like just saying, I felt hurt when you did this, and I forgive you for that.
Right. Yeah.
And I felt hurt when you did this, and I forgive you for that.
Right.
And then vice versa.
Yeah.
And that's kind of along the same lines of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Which was actually really good. I'd never heard that concept before of just expressing forgiveness rather than asking for forgiveness.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, so we've gone on a long rabbit trail.
Yep.
Where did we start? Heart and mind connecting.
Yep. And here we are connecting them.
Connecting them. Let's see. Okay, so we talked about how that helps us connect with God
and connect with others.
Yeah, that was the train of thought there.
Yeah, and how we were talking about application of Perfect.
Cool. Well.
Yep, that's it.
Hope y'all benefited from this conversation. If you would like to continue the journey with us on connecting deeply with God and others, click the subscribe button, and we'd love to see you next time. And comment below. Love to hear your thoughts. All right, bye.